One of my friends and I are in the Order of the Arrow, a branch of Boy Scouts. As a planned campout, we decided to play with the paranormal and spend a night near a supposedly haunted hospital that closed around 1925 or so. As right after the leader of the group got there, myself and 2 other people decided to go into the hospital and spend a few hours in there. Don't ask me why, but I went to scope out the place to see what I could find around the place. To explore, you could say. One of the main halls has these 3 ORs and 4 ERs on the opposite sides of the halls. Then after that, a ward and about 10 rooms. The operating rooms connect to another hall on the opposite side of the rooms. One of my friends dared me to lay on one of the operating tables. I went into the room, but did not follow through with the bet, and went on to the other hall. I knew from hearing people talk about the layout of the building that both halls go into the cafeteria. Needless to say, I was a bit on edge because of the stories I've learned about the place. Things like visions of the patients and doctors to possessions in the hospital. I decided that I would go on the campsite outside, which I could get by the way of the doors in the cafeteria. I walked down the shortest path of the hall, where the doors are located, and tried to open them. I thought the doors were stuck, so I pushed a little harder in both directions, but they didn't budge. After a while I worked the doors loose, but still could not work them open. It had been an hour or so, and so my leader sent in her son to find me. I saw him coming through the doors and got him on the other side of the doors from me. I know from previous times that he could break a 2x4 by drop kicking it if he wanted to. We both tried to get the doors open, and I'm a strong person, and he is too, so I was getting kind of worried that the doors could not open. In light of this, I went to the other set of doors in the opposite hall. The same thing happened again. We could get the doors open a little, but it felt as if someone was pushing against us. I told him to go get the hammer out of the van so we could knock the pins out of the hinges to get the doors open. While he was gone, I felt a sense of presence. You know, when you're in a crowded place of people and you sort of feel the presence of those people there? Well, I stepped back from the doors to try to kick it one more good time to get it open. I got a running start, and even while I was running, the doors started to sway back and forth like someone had just gone through them. I had a clear view of the outside door, so I knew that Jason had not come back in with the hammer. I would have seen him. I slowed down to half a walk to see if the door had opened. At that moment, I again felt as if I was in there with someone, and again the door swayed. I didn't think of ghosts doing that. I just thought it was a fluke breeze. I pushed on the door, but when I pushed, it came back to where it originally was, even though I was pushing harder every second. Although the doors moved back and forth before, they didn't budge now. Right when Jason came back in with my baseball bat and simply broke the glass in the window, even the glass was hard to break, but it finally broke. As I crawled through, I felt a cold gust of air. I got sort of paranoid after that. After we got out of there, Jason saw a pane of glass on the ground in perfect condition and shattered it with half the force he used inside. I've gotten the chills just writing this. I haven't been back to the place and will never go again. Thanks for reading. About 6 years ago, I started working as a nurse's aide at a nursing home. I heard other employees talking about the ghost of a little boy, but I just dismissed the idea. It seems as though every nursing home and hospital has that type of rumor circulating. Anyway, I worked a 3 to 11 shift, and one of my jobs was to put the residents to bed. Most of the residents I took care of had severe cases of Alzheimer's disease. Most were able to talk and carry on conversation, but if I approached them 5 minutes later, they had no idea who I was, let alone remember that they had just had a conversation with me. This is important because it proves it was just not a case of the residents trying to pull a fast one on the employees. I remember the first time I heard one of the residents talk about this little boy. I heard a resident talking to himself in his room, so I went in to see what was going on. I asked him who he was talking to, and he responded by saying that little boy right there. Of course, I did not see anybody. Another time, a woman was having a hard time sleeping, and I asked her what the problem was. That little boy keeps coming in and talking to me, she said. This type of thing happened to me often, usually at least 2 or 3 times a week. It occurred with several different residents, not just 2 or 3, and they all described the boy exactly the same. He was about 5 or 6 years old, wearing bib overalls and black curly hair. He never caused any harm, and there was no physical evidence such as things moving on their own. But it was always the residents who were in a confused state of mind who saw him. Residents who had all their mental capacities never saw him, and neither did employees. I did some research and found out from some local people who lived in the area for years that about 50 years ago on Route 66, which runs right next to the nursing home and is now just a service road, a young boy fitting that description was tragically killed in a car accident. Thanks for reading. Hi, my name's Daniel, and this is a true ghost story which scared me witless. I was told by my dad inside the parked car outside the hospital to go inside my local hospital wing to get my mom from her clinic area where she worked. I went to the wing which she was working on, and at the time was about 8:45, and all the lights were on. In this area, there is a desk that she stands behind, and just to the side is a patient's room, which was empty because the last person in there left at about 5 o'clock earlier that day. I said to my mom, "Dad's outside," and then she replied, "Okay, hang on." My mom then started collecting her bags from behind the desk when suddenly, a head of an old English bald-haired man poked around the corner and stared at me and my mom. My mom said, "Excuse me, visiting hours are over," but the man just stood quiet, just looking at us for about 10 seconds. My mom's face was in terror, and at this point, I said to her, "What's the matter?" And she just looked at me and said, "That's Mr. Willis, but he passed away about 4 months ago." My face was now in sudden terror and I was shaking. My mom was brave enough to go into the patient's room. She went into the room and came out back saying, "There's no one here." I then quickly said, "Let's go." We then both rushed out of the hospital as quick as we could, being scared witless. Of course, now we had the story to tell about, but no one really believed it, and my mom now never dares to stay alone in that wing, and I'm sure as hell never going back. Thank you for your time. On the 29th of September 2001, I was admitted into the hospital with a life-threatening illness, sepsis. It had spread through my whole body. While I was in the ICU, there was an older gentleman to the right of me. I remember seeing his family come and go out of his room. By coincidence, my family and his family had gone downstairs. The gentleman to the right of me got out of his bed and came to me. He came to me and said he spoke my name, Dave, which I had not given him, and said to me, "You're going to be okay. I have to go now. I'll see you again later." Well, shortly after, my fiance at the time came back in the room, and so did his family. I remember hearing the other family early morning, so I asked my wife, "Why are they crying?" And she very softly said, "Honey, they just lost their father." I remember looking out the sliding doors and saying, "No, they haven't. He's walking down the hall now, you just can't see him." The next day, I was placed on life support. 2 years ago, I had to have bypass surgery. This was the second bypass operation I'd had, and due to my age, I was having a difficult time. I spent nearly 3 weeks in the hospital. The doctors had me x-rayed physically every other day. The nights were horrible. I'd be lying there, and suddenly, I'd feel someone pulling the covers down to my feet. I felt hands on my legs. When these things happened, I looked around, but there was no one. I'd pull the covers back up, but would have a hard time getting back to sleep. I had horrid nightmares of being raped and beaten. One day, when I was taking the x-ray, I saw a middle-aged man also waiting for his time to be x-rayed. We started talking. He said he would be glad to go home where he could get a good cup of coffee. He went on to say that he thought the coffee in the hospital was giving him nightmares because he normally never had bad dreams. I asked him what his bad dreams were about, and he said that he dreamed that someone was pulling on his legs and pulling the covers off of him. After I told him that I was also having nightmares, that I was awake when the covers were being pulled off, he looked kind of sheepish at me and said that he didn't want to admit it, but he was awake too. He just said he was asleep because he didn't want me to think he was crazy. I was sure glad to get out of the hospital. Since I've been home, I've had no further dreams like that. Thank you for reading. I've had many experiences in my life, but I can tell those later. I guess I will start out with the first one and give you some info about myself. My name is Aaron, and I grew up in Massachusetts. I was very close to my grandmother, as coming from a not so financially stable family, we had to share a room together, as she was living with us. We had become very close, the two of us, and it was really hard on me when she passed. I guess you could say the story that I'm about to tell you was my mind playing tricks on me, or what I feel to this day is real. I would say it happened in 1991, so I was about 6 or 7 when this had happened to me. My grandmother had just passed away, and I was now sleeping in our room alone. It was probably around 12 a.m. because I had went to sleep for a few hours before, and I had felt like I wasn't sleeping that long if I even was awake. All I know is I had sat up in my bed to see a figure standing next to me. I went to open my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. I then looked behind the figure onto my windowsill to find something 10 times scarier than that. There was a head on my windowsill. At that point, I could scream, and I did. I remember my mother coming in, looking at me, and saying you're fine and I should go back to sleep. She shut the door immediately and everything reappeared in the room. I wanted to get out of bed, but I was too scared, so I just laid there in pure fright. At that point, I had taken my pillow and thrown it at my windowsill to get rid of it. Now the figure that was right beside my bed had moved to a corner of my room where I had mirrors placed against the wall. At this point, the spirit, or whatever it was getting very upset that I was trying to destroy whatever it was I was seeing. This is the part where I tried to figure out whether I was sleeping or awake. All of a sudden, as I was getting out of bed, whatever it was that was beside me took one of my mirrors and threw it at my right side. I'm guessing it was close to morning by this point because as soon as it happened, my mom came rushing in my bedroom and started yelling at me like it was my fault. I lifted up my nightshirt and said to her, if it's my fault, explain this bruise. I had a nice bruise on my side from where the mirror was thrown at me and was in a lot of pain. My mother asked me what happened and I told her the story. She brought me to the hospital right away and I had to go see a therapist. I told them my story, but no one believed me. They thought it was just kid stuff. After that, a lot of other things started happening to me, as well as some worse things, some not as bad. If more of you would like to hear them, and if someone could give me an answer as to why this happened, please feel free to email me. I grew up in an extremely rural area. I never had any other children my own age to play with, so I spent all my time with my father. We became very close right from the time I was born. He was 50 when I was born. My mother was very sick when I was young, and my father took care of me while she was in the hospital. Unless I was in school, I could usually be found by his side, working in the garden or garage. I even went with him whenever he went to visit his friends. When I was 15, he got really sick and passed away a month, December 9th, before my 16th birthday. He had spent most of the previous 5 months hospitalized, and even though no one said it, I knew he was dying. About 2 days before he died, he began to slip in and out of a coma. I stayed by his side, against my mother's wishes. She thought my going to school was more important than being with my dad. I even slept up curled on the bed beside him. The day before he died, she went to make funeral arrangements, and I went with her because my dad had asked me to. While we were gone, my father slipped further into the coma. I spent the night with him and all throughout the next day. Around 4:30 p.m., my mother and sister convinced me to go with them to my sister's house for supper. We left for my sister's place, about 15 minutes from the hospital. We walked in the door and I wanted to leave because I got a real sick feeling in my stomach. My mother and sister were in the middle of telling me that it was just my nerves when the phone rang. It was the hospital. They said to come back. My dad had taken a turn for the worst, and so we left immediately. About 3 minutes from the hospital, there's a set of train tracks. As we were crossing the tracks, I got to recall a strange feeling, like someone was hugging me. I said goodbye, Daddy, out loud. Moments later, we reached the hospital. When we got off the elevator, there was a nurse waiting for us. My father had passed away 5 minutes earlier. I truly believe that he came to me in the car to say goodbye. When he passed away, I lost my best friend. Or did I? It will be 10 years on the 9th of December. I often feel like he's sitting here with me, just like when I was little. Sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy. Whenever I get upset or really stressed out, I feel a presence, and I feel as if someone is giving me a hug. It's hard to describe. My family never talks about my dad. With my mom, it's almost like he never existed. My sister talked of him once about 2 years after he died. She asked me how I knew when he died, when we were in the car. She says she never dreams of him. I dream he's there sometimes. I wake up to the smell of French toast sometimes. He's always cooked French toast for me on Sundays. Sometimes I think my roommate smells it too, because she'll come downstairs and think I'm cooking when I'm not. Sometimes I wake up with my hair braided, when it wasn't braided when I went to sleep. Even one of my ex-boyfriends said he always felt like he was being watched when he was with me, and that the person watching was trying to protect me. Sorry this was so long, but it's a very emotional thing for me. Thanks for reading. Hi, this horrible frightening set of events happened to me almost 1 year ago. I fell off my horse August 24th at about 7 a.m. in Los Angeles, California, 2004, and basically shattered the left side of my body. Due to 2 different horses spooking and bolting, there had been a death of a rider who got disemboweled and died, and a young girl who almost lost her foot. A few days before I fell, in the stables next to where I boarded my horse, which 2 such gruesome events I've never heard of while pleasure riding, especially not in the same place, and another horse to be put down the day before, in my stables exactly where my horse spooked and bolted. Something absolutely terrified my horse to the point he went crazy for about 15 minutes. Even after I fell, they could not calm him down. I have, in 30 years of riding, never seen anything like this before. It certainly almost cost me my life. I think an entity was wreaking havoc that weekend, as 3 people almost died in a 200-yard radius. It even seemed like something followed me home. No one knew the extent of the damage to my body, as they were taking me to the hospital, but it turned out I needed to have surgery, especially for a shattered humerus. But they took me to a hospital where you had to pay the surgery cost, instead of the county hospital, so I basically was sent home with no set broken bones, and told I needed surgery and go to county. How with even 9 broken bones do you even get to another hospital? Anyway, during that time that I was bedridden, and about a week after I fell, something came in through my window, a crack in the left side of my window air conditioner fitter. The fitter wasn't quite wide enough to fit the space between the air conditioner and window, so there was about a ½ inch of space there that I would stuff a rag into or cardboard, but for some reason, nothing ever stayed to keep it plugged up. Whatever flew into my house, flew in with such force that it made my blinds fly from the window at a 45-degree angle and bash loudly back down to the window pane. My daughter and friends Kathy and Baird saw this happen too. You could immediately feel an angry presence, like someone had stormed into the room with rage. I was trapped in my bed with this thing with me and my 12-year-old daughter. It is the most frightening thing that has ever happened to me and my daughter. The haunting lasted about 4 months. Almost right away, my computer quit working. My daughter was using it. The VCR and TV quit, as did the microwave and air conditioners. It was 90 to 100 degrees outside, and my car was lent to a friend of mine, and I had just put $3,000 in that car and got a new battery before I fell, and I had to get the car towed 4 times and buy another battery. I should have saved my money for the day I almost died falling from my horse. Even my phone line went dead. I was trapped in bed and had so many problems fixing all this broken stuff. Everything electrical just died. Books came flying off the shelves and nothing would stay put on top of the refrigerator. Once we actually saw the shadow person fly from the smoke detector to the VCR. Into the VCR. It was a very quick trail of black, zip and then gone. At first I thought it was a ghost. Our bed is metal and hollow, and while we would be trying to sleep, we heard and felt something scratching on the bed, and then a few other times it would hit the bed underneath very hard. It actually pushed boxes from under the bed around while we were in bed too. A few times we would see it, A very dark shape, formless really, no arms or legs, like a shadow, dart from the closet floor to under the bed at night, and then the scratching and banging would start. I mean, this thing was tangible. A lamp fell and crashed and broke on my head as I was laying in bed, and the ceiling fan would go on its own, very fast, and we do not have that speed in our fan. You could tell when something was going to happen from it because there was an awful pungent smell. Very localized, and the smell would move around. A bunch of other stuff happened, but the point is that at first, I was sure it was a ghost, but after reading about shadow people, the consensus is that they are aliens. There have been tons of sightings and encounters lately. I saw it moving around my room almost in the shape of a person once. I felt it was male, and sometimes it felt very evil, and sometimes it just felt a presence. Type in shadow people on your search engine. What do you think? I would like feedback. I truly believe that this thing could have killed me. If my friends and daughter had not witnessed a haunting with me, I might be doubting my own mind now. I swear this is all true. Hello, it's Outro Man, here to give you another outro because this outro man went to the dentist. Just kidding, it's Phantom. And you know, even phantoms need to go to the dentist because even phantoms need that checkup every so often. It doesn't matter if you're alive or dead. When you die, you're gonna have to go to the dentist either way to keep up those shiny pearls you got in your teeth. Haha. No, but really, guys, just ignore what I just said. I always say that every outro. I say something completely ambiguous, and then you guys are like, what? And then I'm like, yeah, just ignore it, and we continue the cycle over and over again for each video. So just share, comment, and like this video. Comment down below because it makes me sad when you guys don't listen to me and don't comment. And I love interacting with you guys because it makes me so happy. And you guys know that, but I'm telling these new subscribers who are new to my channel, if you subscribe, then that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get a response from me. No, really, guys, you will. But anyway, guys, I'm just gonna sign off now. So good night, good morning, and please share this video, like, comment, subscribe. Shameless promotion plug, out.